Imagine hating a holiday you once needed more than anyone. Imagine rejecting love because love once rejected you first. Imagine turning pain into personality because that's easier than admitting you're lonely. This is the tragedy of the Grinch. He isn't a monster. He isn't a villain built from greed. He is a wounded child wearing the shape of bitterness. Every joke is protection. Every insult is a shield. And every act of sabotage is really just a test. Will anyone care enough to stop me? The Grinch begins as a child, not a menace. He begins with hope, curiosity, and a desire to belong, but belonging requires acceptance, and he never receives it. Mockery cuts deeper when you're too young to defend against it, so he chooses isolation instead of humiliation. He escapes into solitude because solitude cannot laugh at him. He rewrites rejection as choice, because choice feels stronger than exile. A mountain becomes safer than a classroom. Silence becomes safer than vulnerability. Running becomes survival, not preference. The Grinch is mocked not just for appearance, but for emotion. His longing becomes comedy. His affection becomes spectacle. Every attempt at connection becomes an invitation for cruelty. So he learns a brutal lesson. Feelings are dangerous. He locks warmth away to avoid risk. He transforms heartbreak into cynicism. Snow settles where affection used to live. And cynicism feels safer than hope. A life lived alone changes shape. There is no guidance, no reflection, no compassion. He grows without someone affirming growth. He matures without someone validating change. He becomes an adult with a child's emotional injuries. Loneliness becomes an ecosystem, not a circumstance. He stops expecting kindness because experience denies it. He becomes suspicious of joy because he cannot decode it. Silence becomes his only reliable companion, and emotional development stops where pain began. The Grinch does not like cruelty. He weaponizes it. Sarcasm becomes armor. Contempt becomes distance. Scorn becomes vocabulary. If he makes fun of the world first, the world cannot hurt him next. He becomes the aggressor to avoid becoming the victim. He pretends not to care because caring failed him. Indifference becomes a performance. Bitterness becomes identity. Meanness becomes anesthetic. The Grinch hates Christmas because Christmas exposes him. It forces emotional participation. It forces celebration he does not feel. It forces expectation he cannot meet. Disdain is easier than inadequacy. Mockery is easier than grief. He rejects the world before the world rejects him. He refuses tradition because tradition reminds him of exclusion. He fears disappointment more than he fears hatred. Hating Christmas protects him from wanting Christmas. Hope is dangerous when you have been hurt by it. Hope promises connection. Hope risks rejection. Hope invites disappointment. Loneliness requires none of those risks. Solitude is predictable. Isolation is controllable. No one can break a heart that never opens. So the Grinch mistakes loneliness for strength. He calls detachment freedom. Control becomes his comfort. He chooses when to engage. He chooses when to watch. He controls information, timing, and access. If life hurt him once, he now dictates the terms. Control replaces trust. Dominance replaces cooperation. Planning becomes emotional insulation. Manipulation becomes entertainment. And strategy becomes therapy. Superiority is a lie he repeats to avoid shame. He pretends he is above emotion, above tradition, above happiness. He critiques what he secretly wants. He insults what he quietly misses. He disguises longing as intellectual distance. Superiority is camouflage. Judgment is comfort. Condemnation is distraction. Believing he's better feels easier than admitting he feels left out. The Grinch is not anti-joy, he is anti-exclusion. Joy reminds him of absence. Laughter reminds him of ridicule. Community reminds him of rejection. Celebration triggers memory. So he despises what reminds him of wounds. Destroying joy becomes symbolic self-defense. Suppressing happiness feels like reclaiming power. If he can't have joy, no one should. Stealing Christmas is not conquest. It is communication. It is a scream disguised as strategy. It is a plea disguised as villainy. Sabotage forces acknowledgement. For once, look at me. When emotional needs are ignored, destruction becomes a vocabulary. He creates crisis to test whether anyone cares. He provokes reaction because reaction proves existence. Even negative attention feels better than invisibility. Sabotage becomes dialogue. The Grinch is hostile because vulnerability terrifies him. Vulnerability can be mocked, it can be rejected, it can be ignored. So he replaces vulnerability with provocation. Hostility commands distance. Distance prevents harm. He avoids intimacy by manufacturing conflict. He avoids attachment by insulting connection. He avoids desire by scorning affection. Cruelty becomes emotional armor. His green fur, wild eyes, and contorted expressions mirror his psychology. He becomes what he thinks others see. Grotesque becomes performance. Disheveled becomes rebellion. If the world finds him ridiculous, he amplifies ridiculous. If the world finds him unpleasant, he weaponizes unpleasant. Appearance becomes camouflage. Identity becomes caricature. Transformation becomes punishment. And humor becomes mask. Mountaintops represent distance. Altitude replaces intimacy. Observation replaces participation. He watches life rather than living it. He monitors joy rather than receiving it. He studies emotion rather than risking it. Physical distance mirrors emotional distance. If he cannot join the world, he will position himself above it. Isolation becomes hierarchy. Height becomes denial. The Grinch critiques community because he was never invited into it. He mocks bonding because bonding rejected him. He dismisses love because love dismissed him first. He treats social unity as stupidity. He treats kindness as weakness. He treats inclusion as hypocrisy. Exclusion breeds resentment. Resentment breeds philosophy. Philosophy justifies isolation. And isolation rewrites memory. The Grinch never emotionally matured. He was abandoned mid-development. He responds with tantrums. He internalizes shame. He sulks instead of communicates. He lashes out instead of expresses need. He weaponizes sarcasm instead of honesty. Emotional growth froze where humiliation began. He is a child wearing adult bitterness, a wounded boy in a man's silhouette. Cindy Lou, who does not represent innocence. She represents interruption. She interrupts the narrative he built. She contradicts his certainty. She undermines his hatred. She offers compassion without condition. Kindness destabilizes cynicism. Acceptance disrupts bitterness. One act of genuine empathy dismantles decades of armor because gentleness is louder than rage. Because recognition heals where logic fails. The Grinch's heart does not grow. When it unfreezes, it returns to capacity. It remembers what was buried. Love was not absent. It was suppressed. Emotion was not impossible. It was denied. He was never incapable of feeling. He was terrified of repeating pain. Healing begins with acknowledgement. Acknowledgement begins with being seen. Being seen begins with compassion. Compassion restores humanity. Because hatred was never about hate. Because cruelty was never about cruelty. Because isolation was never preference. It was protection. He wanted connection, but feared rejection. He wanted love, but remembered humiliation. He wanted Christmas, but associated it with pain. His villainy was camouflage. His sabotage was grief. His bitterness was self-defense. And his entire identity was built around a wound that never healed.